Hello everybody and welcome to this first video in a new series called What Went Wrong With. Now what I will be trying to do is explain in 7 short points what went wrong with Resident Evil 6. As you just saw, this first point will be about how many cutscenes we find in Resident Evil 6. I dare to go as bold as saying that depending on the campaign you're playing, you have about 25-30% of your playtime filled with normal cutscenes, interactive cutscenes, cinematics, quicktime events and so on. Now in many of the latest modern games you feel like you're playing an interactive movie where the actual gameplay seems only to serve as a filler between the cutscenes, and Area 6 is no exception to this. To be honest, it's just a shame that all this time wasted on the cutscenes could have been used for actual gameplay. Now this little feature is something that is ruining a lot of games for me lately, simply because quicktime events rip the control over the character out of the player's hands and turns it into a button smashing fest. QTEs quickly became a standard feature on console games, and again in Resident Evil 6 the PC player gets the bad part of that system, simply because it's poorly adapted for PC. More QTEs, more QTEs, more!
Captain! I guess the muscle memory saved me there. Hey, Pierce.
Talk about stretching game length, huh?
Here's your ass. You want to return the favor?
You're gonna tell me everything once we get to the cathedral. Deal?
Now this poorly added mechanic is something that I really hate in games, forcing you to move at a pace that the devs want you to so that they can stretch the length of the game. Maybe if these long pauses served any purpose I would be okay with it, but the time ain't even spent for storylines from your partner. On top of that, you'll have plenty of examples where you'll be forced down one particular path because it's blocked off. The devs often tease you with more areas to explore, but then abruptly cut off access to it with crashing cars, collapsing structures, or fire and steam.
Well, this one is different.
Now the enemies in RE6 are not only numerous, they're more and more often bullet sponges and occasionally outright silly, possibly even worse than in Resident Evil 5. Or in this particular case, outright annoying. These regenerators are basically indestructible and are meant to severely slow you down and eat up all the lead in your inventory. There is no permanent way to kill them, only temporarily freeze them up.
This isn't working.
Now it's cool to occasionally have an indestructible enemy like the regenerator boss in Dead Space 2 or the bosses from previous Resident Evil games, but those are bosses. In Resident Evil 6 they use the regeneration ability on the average enemy, even the zombies. Now, since obesity is a hot topic these days, I think that the devs thought it would be cool to implement this into the game as well. Now, I don't know what the reasoning is behind putting zombie mutants in the game that basically swallow lead unless you realize by accident that you can't kill them in the head but in the heart, which only gets exposed if you hit it in the chest area. Without any perks / abilities equipped, even a normal zombie can easily take 5 pistol shots to the head due to the amazing critical hit system they implemented. Now the screaming zombie is not so much a silly enemy, but more of an annoyance, and serves as an excuse for the devs to create waves and waves of zombies unless you kill this mutant. And killing it literally turns into a goose chase, since it will keep running from you while it summons the army of the undead.
What is that?
I know these enemies are supposed to look like crossover between grasshoppers and humans, but actually they look more like a turkey or a chicken to me. At some part in the campaign you'll encounter some weird killer vacuum cleaning robots as well. Now don't get me wrong, this game has several nice innovative bosses and some nice enemies, but I do like the old enemies based on the T-Virus and G-Virus a lot more. I think it's not that hard to come up with better enemies than a chicken or a walking bagpipe. The main problem with the puzzles in this game is that the level of thinking required to complete them is basically on the same level as that of a child, and I'm not even kidding here. Everything you need to know is explained by your partner or hints. There is also no real depth of thinking anymore to the puzzles, since they're pretty linear and require you to follow a path which consists of several sequences that you basically cannot miss. And these puzzles are mostly from the Lian campaign as well. Other campaigns are known to have even less and more basic puzzles. And as you just saw here, the clue to this next puzzle is just written on the wall. In some parts of the campaign the puzzles are just as basic as matching up numbers.
I think this panel and the numbers on the doors are connected.
Separate locks.
Jesus. Alright, let's just figure out a way to open it.
Yeah, bad luck here. One down, two to go.
Other puzzles in the game are even more basic and require almost no thinking at all. They just require you to find some keys or pull a lever by following a certain path that's laid out for you. Or electrifying a giant snake by luring it into a puddle of water. In the end, it just feels to me like the devs were not even trying to come up with inventive puzzles anymore. First of all, for those who do not know what POV stands for, it simply means point of view, which is terribly implemented in chasing scenes or interactive cutscenes throughout Resident Evil 6. Now I don't know how easy this was on consoles, but on PC this part seems a lot harder with the WASD keys than with a controller joystick.
Captain, over here! Okay, pull me up!
And if the margin for error isn't short enough already, they're taking their sweet time to climb as well. At this point in time I have to take a shot at the monster and continue running, but here comes the tricky part. The camera constantly wiggles around and switches position up to the point that I can't even see my character anymore, and running forward becomes backward, forward becomes right, now it's right plus forward, forward again, and now dead. Second try. Yeah, for fuck's sake, this is exactly the disorientation that I meant.
One angry son of a bitch!
And dead once more. Now the controls are left plus forward again. Ah, fuck it. Now I know this clip comes from the more action-focused campaign of Chris, but in the horror-focused Lian campaign it's not much different. You'll encounter parts like this at least once every chapter. The most memorable one was the cathedral entrance, where enemies kept swarming you for nearly 5 minutes in a row. Action and horror-wise, Resident Evil 6 improved quite a bit on its predecessor Resident Evil 5, but for the veterans of the Resident Evil franchise it's still not quite there yet. The only reason why, in my opinion, Resident Evil 6 improves in those two areas is because it provides us with 3 different campaigns with 3 different playstyles, which is great for offering a wide range of variety for the player. However, that doesn't mean that Resident Evil 6 doesn't have its shortcomings, which I've described for the most part in the last 7 points. Yet there's still some minor flaws with the game, and for example one of those is that the game explains very little at the start. For example, how to manage your inventory or how to kill certain enemies. Now the final verdict of this game's rights and wrongs. I'll see you guys next time.